So the virgin birth, right? There was a conference. Dr. Lynn Green actually did a presentation at a conference, the Journal for the Society for the Study of Egyptian Antiquities. And what he did was he broke down the whole thing about virgin and virginity. He said, it is usually assumed the term virgin is universally used to designate a person who has not engaged in sexual intercourse. However, the ancient Egyptians apparently did not have a word that matches this definition of virgin. Let me repeat that. The ancient Egyptians apparently did not have a word that matches this definition of virgin or a term for the state of virginity. Distinctions in terminology seem to have existed between nubile females who had not given birth and those who had not, rather than those who had engaged in sexual activity and those who had not. This terminology is also linked to distinctions of age and sexual maturity. The term nepheret, which indicated both youth and nubility, is comparable to the Greek parthenos in that it seems to designate a young woman who has not given birth. The implication of the phrase en wepet sen, used together with nepheret, are also discussed. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, just for the record, I don't know if Onk you want to jump in for a second, Onk, or are you good?
No, I'm good. You right there.
All right, cool. All right. So now when we go to what happened is this whole virgin thing. It's a confusing topic, and the reason why it's confusing because you have dictionaries that try to explain a word that is basically people are Christianizing Kemet theology, in my opinion. So one of the best explanations I've ever seen is from the encyclopedia.com's article on the virgin goddess. The virgin goddess is a non-homogeneous, highly problematic concept for scholarly use, for it was partly made up by the religious politics of Greek city-states in order to further their patriarchal aims. And for the other part has been popularized by a certain kind of feminist interest promoted by followers of the contemporary goddess religion, thus linking later virginal goddesses to earlier figures who were supposedly parthenogenetic, that is, able to create life exclusively out of themselves, is problematic. The assumption of a virgin goddess with a history beginning earlier than in classical Greece lumps together phenomenologically and historically different qualities. It must be concluded that a pre-Greek concept of virgin goddesses did not exist, and that even from the classical Greek period onwards, virgin goddesses were never categorized as a group. Let me repeat this again. The assumption of a virgin goddess with a history beginning earlier than in classical Greece lumps together phenomenologically and historically different qualities. It must be concluded that a pre-Greek concept of virgin goddesses did not exist, and that even from the classical Greek period onwards, virgin goddesses were never categorized as a group. All right. Therefore, it was decreed that a woman must be a virgin at marriage and refrain from sexual.
AD, sorry to cut you. AD, you gave a bomb on that?
All right, one bomb coming up.
Come on, man. We can't order the bomb slow though.
There you go.
Therefore, it was decreed that a woman must be a virgin at marriage and refrain from sexual intercourse with any man but her husband. Since marriage meant subjection of the female and her control by the male-defined cultural order, virginity made her an outsider and a potential threat. In other words, for the Greeks, virginity became a means to express what was to their standards a paradox, a female who is independent from and even capable of exercising power over men. So it actually had something to do with power of women. For those Greek goddesses who were perceived according to the virgin pattern, this meant that they never became fully subordinated. Consequently, virgin goddesses do not always necessarily abstain from sexuality. They may be virgins in the sense of being unmarried, or even in the sense of not being confined through marriage to a male god. The complex nature of the virgin goddesses is further explicated by the fact that the unmarried girl or woman possesses a threat to patriarchal social order because her sexuality is not under the control of man. Boom. They carry the connotation of being wild or untamed. This wildness can manifest itself in at least three forms: as a connection to wild places and wild animals not tamed or under control of the city, as passion for the ritual shedding of blood, which draws hunters and warriors away from the city and the family, and as untamed sexuality by which men are seduced and can be endangered.
Don't get the wrong idea. We've never done anything like this before. We're virgins.
Virgins? No, you're not.
All right. So again, when you're looking for virginity and virgin, were once terms of power, strength, and independence used to describe the goddesses who were immune to the temptations of Dionysus, the Greek god of seduction and wine. So when you look at virgin originally, it had a total different meaning. Now, when it got to the medieval time period now, this is when it changed now. In the medieval times, virginity became a sexual term for heterosexual women who had not been penetrated by a penis. So virginity was classified as a gift from the Christian God only to be released by a husband. So that's when it changed during the medieval time, just to mean that. That don't mean it never had that meaning earlier. It's just that in the medieval time, it changed to permanently mean that. All right. And if you go to the Latin dictionary, you see the first meaning is maiden, young woman, girl of marriageable age. That's what Virgo meant, or virgin. But then in the second meaning, it said virgin or woman sexually intact. All right. With the virgin birth now, you have a transmission, family, from the LXS 714. Look, the virgin shall be with child and bear a son. That's a Septuagint translation. And the Septuagint was in the 3rd century BC. In the Hebrew translation, it doesn't say virgin, it says young woman. So what happened is you have Isaiah 7:14 written in Hebrew, and the person who wrote the Greek, they used the wrong word. They used parthenos because it is ambiguous. It could mean young woman, or it can mean virgin. So when Matthew is writing now, he's trying to fulfill the scripture from a Jewish perspective. And he says, look, the virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will name him Emmanuel. But he's using Isaiah 7:14. He's using the Septuagint version. That's what the Bible writers are using. There's no contact with Kemet or Egypt at all with the virgin. So for them to say it comes from Egypt, I have no idea where it comes from. But again, goes back to my original meaning from the encyclopedia.com on goddesses. Everybody is a virgin goddess. Look at Damkina, which is Ninhursag. She's considered the earth mother, goddess of the moon, water, earth, and its fertility. She's called pure virgin and all that stuff. All right. Ninhursag, for don't know, is a Sumerian mother goddess, one of the oldest and most important in the Mesopotamian pantheon. All right. She was originally known as Damkina. All right. And she goes back to 2900 BC. So if you look at her, she's earlier than what we call Isis or Aset. All right. And of course, that's what she looks like on the temple, the Ninhursag temple, worldhistory.org. All right. So virgin back in the days meant independence of the marriage tie. This is according to the evidence for the doctrine of the virgin birth by Thomas James Thorborn. He goes into what the doctrine of the virgin birth and what virgin actually means. So this is actually agreed on by scholarship, what I'm saying. All right. Virginity in ancient Mesopotamia. Let's go again to them. No word for virgin. In Western languages too, there's no word that originally designated virgin. You're going to see Parthenos, Virgo, Jungfrau. Remember this word, Jungfrau, that boy used? All designate nubile girls before marriage. Maidens are like that word. Came by extension either to denote or to connote sexual innocent girls because of the expectation that respectable girls would refrain from sexual intercourse until marriage. A Jungfrau should be sexually innocent as well as a young woman. In principle, a nubile young woman does not make love. All right. What the experts say. The experts said there's no word for virgin in ancient Egypt. 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 All right. All right. Look at this guy right here. This is for Brother Unk. He's born of a virgin in Mesoamerica. Did they get this from Kemet? So you have supernatural birth all over the world. And if these people are in Mesoamerica, you're going to say, hey, this is from Kemet too? This guy, they don't know about no Kemet, man. All right. So the chronology, how did the virgin birth get in the Bible? For those who don't know, Isaiah 7, the prophecy, the term Ha'alma, translated as Parthenos in the Greek. In the 3rd century, it has a double meaning, unmarried woman or virgin. The 1st century writer for Matthew uses Parthenos as virgin and not young woman. And that's how you got virgin birth in Matthew. All right. What ancient Kemet text was used? I don't know of any that the authors of Matthew used. They use Isaiah 7. They didn't need to use ancient Kemet and talk about virgin with Isis and Aset. That's not even on their minds. All right. But of course, you have other people who have been called virgin. The Roman Emperor Augustus, Alexander the Great, all claim to have been some sort of virgin and all that stuff.